start off with, I like to start with a story. I like to think I'm a little bit psychic. I like to think I know what people are thinking. So, true story, when I was graduating from college, I was looking for an in-between job for a couple months. So I thought, my name's Christelle, it might lend itself to this. Why don't I try out one of those psychic hotlines? You know, be on the other side of the phone and just tell people what I think they should do with their lives, you know? And I thought, Miss Christelle is a perfect name. Didn't work out so well. But I got this vibe as soon as people saw the title of my sermon. I'm thinking that a lot of you out there are thinking, oh, not another one. Not another one of these. I know how to embrace these. Honey, I have been a unificationist longer than you could pronounce the word Montse. I know how to embrace these. Now, for those of you who are new to our community, here's a little bit of a tidbit. If a unificationist comes up to you and says either the words Jacob and Esau or Cain and Abel, sit back, relax, you are about to experience the biggest ego stroking of your life, because they are probably about to tell you that you are the Jacob in this scenario, or you are the Abel, and that other person is the Cain, that other person is the Esau, and the only reason that they disagree with you is because they can't see from God's view. It is ordained, you are right, they are wrong. and that's pretty usual. We like to think that we are the good person scenario. And even in the story of Jacob and Esau, you know, Jacob had to sacrifice a little bit to Esau. But I think for a lot of us, we prefer to be on the sacrificial end than to ever admit that we're wrong. Right? It's a natural human thing. We like to victimize ourselves. We like to be the martyr. We don't want to think that we're the Esau. Technical difficulties again, sorry. Alright, so in the Old Testament, things are pretty black and white. It's very clear when you read the Old Testament who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. It's like a Michael Bay action movie. There's explosions everywhere. If you sin, you're smoked right there. You know, and there's a very clear protagonist, antagonist. What was not so clear, again like a Michael Bay movie, is the motivation. You don't know why the good guy is the good guy, why the bad guy is the bad guy. It's kind of heavy-handed, but not very clear why things happen the way that they do. Now, as unificationists, we have the divine principle. And the divine principle teaches us to look at things symbolically. And we can get pretty cocky over this because we feel like we've got the cheat codes to life. We know what's going on. We know what's going on in the Old Testament, why things happen. At least we think we do. And the divine principle is divided up very similarly to a college textbook. Or at least I'm an engineer, so it was divided up very similarly to my college textbooks, where you have the formulas and the rules in the front. And then the second half of the textbook is all the examples. So you have sample problems that you can work through to try to help you understand how those formulas work. And the divine principle, the second half, part 2, goes through Old Testament and Christian history and tries to show us how those rules in part 1 apply to that history so we can better understand it. Go back. So when I was growing up, like most young unificationists, and most religious youth in general, I was brought up on stories, originally, when I was very young. And this is good for children, because for children, you need to teach some things where there's a very clear good person, a very clear bad person, and a very clear moral. So Old Testament stories lend themselves to this a little bit. That's why a lot of Christians and unificationists use Old Testament stories. There's a clear good person, a clear bad person, but what's not always clear, again, is the moral. So for people that aren't unificationists, usually they'll stick with stories that are a little bit easier, that have a clear moral, like Jonah and the whale. This is a great one. Basically, you're teaching kids the moral, do what you're told or you get eaten by a whale. So you better listen. It's pretty good. But for unificationists, we don't skip over the hard stuff because we feel, okay, we got the DP, we got part 2, So we learn those easy stories like Jonah and the whale, but we also learn stories like Jacob and Esau. We learn stories from part 2 of the DP. Now for children, although the adult thinks that the moral is very clear, is teaching you the moral from part 1 of the DP, for children sometimes this gets a little convoluted. So the story of Jacob and Esau, I remember when I was in 6th grade, I went to Catholic school, and I was sitting in my religion class, with all my classmates, and we were reading through the Jacob and Esau story. And for me, I knew the lineage of Abraham back and forth by that point. I thought I was set. So it was really annoying to me because everyone else was reading so slow because they couldn't pronounce any of the names. And it just made me livid. This one girl, she would always say Jacob and Esau. And I was like, oh my God. These newbies, they don't know what they're doing. So I was sitting in the back of class, turning red, and at the end of the story, my teacher goes up to the front of the classroom and she asks everyone, so children, why did Esau get angry at Jacob? And my hand just shoots up. I'm ready to go. I'm ready for this. So she calls on me, and I say, well, because Jacob was the second son, so he was Abel. And Esau was the first son, so he was Cain. So it's obvious that Jacob was right and Esau was wrong. Esau just couldn't see it. He couldn't see it without a viewpoint. And my teacher just looked at me like, oh God. I think she was just trying to check and see if we were listening, paying attention. But that's what I understood. That's how I understood the Jacob and Esau story. And I was the second child in the family, so this made perfect sense to me. My little sister's name is Celine, and when we were fighting, like kids naturally do, I would think to myself, doesn't she get how this works? Obviously, I'm right because I'm the second. I remember thinking to myself, one day, 10,000 years from now, children in 6th grade classrooms are going to be learning the story of Celine and Christelle. And how Christelle triumphed over Celine, because she was right, and then Celine did that better. But that's how I saw it. I saw the story, and the moral wasn't clear to me. But how often do we do that even as adults? We look at the story, we look at the example, and we try to apply that example to everything without actually applying and understanding the moral behind it. It's like as an engineer, if I just took one of the sample problems in the back of my book and applied it to everything. You know what? It's easier if every soil in the world is sand. So I can apply this one example problem. I work in geotechnical engineering. We work in soils, and not everything is sand. So if I try to pretend everything was sand, all my buildings would be falling down. But how often do we try to do that? It's much simpler. It's much easier. But let's see how many of you can remember what the original moral to this story was. Here's Cain and Abel. You can replace that with Jacob and Esau. Here is a hint to the question I'm about to ask. Pop quiz. Who knows what the alternate ending to the Cain and Abel story should have been? Anyone? I got a small hand back there. Very, very, very close. What would their positions have been? If the position is not Cain and Abel, what is it? It's true, but not the answer I'm looking for. Any last person? Want to try it? Yes, but what would their positions have been if not Cain and Abel? Not what I'm looking for. Okay, and what would their positions have been? What are the two words I'm looking for? Yes, subject and object. Very good. Very good. In the restoration period, when God is trying to bring us back to how things were before the fall, Cain and Abel were supposed to restore the subject and object positions in a way. They were supposed to act as subject and object. So if we always treat things like we're in the time of restoration, then yes, it's Cain and Abel, but we're coming out of the time of restoration, right? So why are we still talking about everything being Cain and Abel? Nowadays, we're trying to get to this. We're trying to get to subject and object. And in this case, this is a prime example of how we usually show a perfect subject and object relationship that has formed a perfect four-position foundation, which is our word for any kind of perfected relationship. You perfect yourself through unity between your mind as subject, your body as object. You perfect your family like this. You got the father shown here as subject, the mother as object. God is subject over everything. Children are object to their parents. And this is how we usually show things. And this can be quite quickly misunderstood. And I don't know if my dad's going to be angry at me for saying this, but he used to say sometimes, I am the subject, because I am the father. Therefore, yada yada yada. He was right. He had a position as a subject. But what does the DP actually say? This is directly from the DP. I'm going to read it out loud. Any one of the positions of the four-position foundation may assume the position of subject partner and engage the other three as its object partners, forming a communion of three object partners. When each of the four then acts as a subject partner, any one of those four acting as a subject partner, and enters into give and take with the other three revolving around it, they fulfill the three object purpose. Now, oftentimes we stop at the four-position foundation. But that's not what the DP says. We have to move on to the three object purpose, where anyone in the family can be the subject. Now, let's say there's only, going back, let's say there's only one child in the family to make this easier. That means that any given time in your family, 3 times out of 4, you're going to be the object. Only 1 times out of 4 are you going to be the subject. And that's not always how we understand things, is it? So we have to start thinking outside the circles. I like to say it. And usually, as you grow up, as you grow older, as in yourself, in your family, in your relationships, you start realizing this is the case. Maybe your children grow older and you realize you've got to start making room for them. Sometimes they're the subject. And even young children, sometimes they're the subject. They go up to you and they say something that just blows your mind. And you realize, oh my God. In this case, they're the subject. I need to follow them. And something funny happened to me as I grew up. You know, again, going back to the story of me and my older sister, I'm 2 of 3. I have a younger sister too. So as time went on, I realized, wait a minute. Okay, if I'm the Abel to my older sister's Cain, then that means, oh no. How does this work? There's more than 2 of us. How does it work? You know, does you have to like, does it work better if I like am out of the picture and then there's only 2 people? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Those things break down if we still are thinking about them in terms of those restoration positions. So very quick, another second pop quiz. Who can name for me the 4 fallen natures? One of you out there has these memorized, has been waiting all your life, has been sitting on this, waiting to raise your hand. I know it, I can feel it. Who is it? We got 1 person, come on. You don't have to name all 4, just, all right. All right, very good. Handling Seagull's viewpoint, those are 2. There's 2 more. Leaving in proper position. Who's got the 4th one? We have reversal of dominion. There's a 4th one.
Multiplication of evil.
Multiplication of evil. Very, very good. A plus. There's the 4th. Now, these are things that anyone can commit, whether they are in the restoration period or now. And let's do a quick based off of the four-position foundation. So let's go back to the Jacob and Esau story. I'm going to quickly run through it for those of you unfamiliar who have been wondering what I'm talking about this entire time. So the basis of our understanding of well, let me reword this. The really interesting part of the Jacob and Esau story goes like this. Esau is the older son, Jacob is number 2. So Esau is supposed to inherit everything from his father. At one point, their father decides he's going to give a blessing to Esau as the eldest son. He sends Esau out hunting. Jacob dresses up like Esau. Esau's a hairy guy, so he puts on like furry stuff, which makes me really wonder how hairy Esau was. But anyway, he feels the need to put some hairy stuff on himself. Goes to his father, who's a little bit blind and kind of on his way out, and receives the blessing from his father in Esau's place. So when Esau comes back, he is livid and for very good reason. So Jacob has to run away because he's afraid Esau's going to kill him. Right? Now, looking at this at face value, Esau has a pretty good point. I mean, Jacob just snuck around behind his back, behind almost everyone's back, stole something that was his, you know, and now runs away. They're going to face Esau. So Esau had every reason to be really, really angry. And after 21 years, it takes 21 years where Jacob thinks, okay, I'm going to try to go back. Maybe he forgot. He goes back. And as soon as he gets home, he puts all his belongings in front of him, including his entire family, everything, because he's just trying to appease this guy who he's sure is going to kill him, you know. And then he bows down and calls Esau the face of God. And what does Esau do? He was able at that point to just wring his neck, and he had a whole army behind him. He could have done anything he wanted, but he embraces Jacob, and he invites him back in. He doesn't kill him. Gives him back everything Jacob can have what's his. So we have to think for a second. Now this is a beautiful ending to that story. Why did Jacob need to sneak around in the first place? Why did he need to dress up? I mean, that's some pretty intense dedication right there, to dress up in like animal parts and like, you know, pretend to be your older brother. Well, earlier in the story, Esau had sold his birthright to Jacob. Had sold essentially his position as the elder son. So in Jacob's mind, Jacob has that right. Jacob should be allowed to go and get that blessing. But Esau doesn't make room. He's not gonna see him even as an equal. No, he's the younger brother. So he's gotta wait. He's gotta get the lesser blessing. He can't be up there with him. That's not okay. And the four fallen natures, in a way, if we're talking about position, can be seen as just not allowing space for another person. Either taking up that space so another person can't rise, or stealing it and pushing that person down. It's taking that position when maybe you don't need it or it shouldn't be yours. Now, in any healthy relationship, healthy family, healthy organization, healthy business, one of the sure signs of that health is if you go up to any person in that relationship, any person in that family, any person in that organization, any person in that company, and every single person can say to you with 100% confidence, I have advocacy in this company. I am heard in this company. If I have something to say, it's going to be heard. If I need to do something, if I need to step up, there's room for me. I can grow. I can be heard by the CEO of my company if need be. And the CEO or the parents or the head of that organization can say the same thing. I know what's going on down below. And I know when to step back and let others take the lead. And that is a healthy organization. That is a true four-position foundation. When anyone, at any time, can lead when so necessary. And that's one of the reasons why, as I mentioned earlier, I have been an educator for Go for quite some time. And there are many reasons why I stopped doing that, but one of them is because I realized I've been here for 2 years. There are people now that are at the age that I was when I started doing this, who have no room to try education themselves. And I was concerned because I looked around me and I realized I was the only female educator that I knew of. And it was scary. I was thinking, if I step down, if I walk away, maybe there won't be any more female educators. Maybe there won't be anyone in that position that can lift up other young girls to try the same thing. But I also thought, if I stay here, I'm going to remain the only woman doing this. If I leave, maybe another woman can step up. Maybe then there will be 2 female educators. Maybe there'll be educators that are so beyond what I could ever be because they're younger and they're closer to younger generations and they can do better than I can. And so it takes a certain amount of trust to step down and allow others to take your place. Maybe it won't be what you expect, but maybe they're right. Maybe by staying there, you're being the Esau in this situation. So when you think about it, the true hero of the Jacob and Esau story is Esau. He's the one that, though he had every right to be very angry, decided that his love for his brother, his love for his family, superseded his need to be right. And so he was able to take Jacob in and allow him some room. Allow them to be subject and object. Allow them to operate much more healthily. So what I'm asking you is not to embrace Esau, but to be an embracing Esau. Because again, 3 times out of 4 in a 3-person family, you're going to be the object. So you got to allow that space. And one of the most, I guess, best piece, I'm going to rephrase that so it's grammatically correct. One of the best pieces of advice I ever received is someone who told me, if you don't know whether you are right or wrong in a situation, always assume that you are the king. Always assume that you are the Esau. Because either way, you need to be willing to give everything and just allow the other person space. So this is what I'm asking you to do. See what I did there, country? I knew I was psychic. I knew I fooled all you guys. Thank you very much. Have a good Sunday.